Welcome to this special edition of the New Stack Makers on the Road. We're here at HashiCorp Global in beautiful Los Angeles, California. Discussions with technologists giving you their expertise and insights to help you with your everyday work. Infrastructure enables innovation. HashiCorp provides consistent workflows to provision, secure, connect, and run any infrastructure for any application.
Hello, and welcome to an on-the-road episode of the New Stack Makers podcast. I'm Heather Joslin, features editor of the New Stack, and we're coming to you from the scene of HashiCorp Global here in sunny downtown Los Angeles. Today's episode is brought to you by HashiCorp, makers of Terraform, Vault, Console, and other solutions for consistent cloud operations. Today we'll be sharing with you a case study from BOK Financial, a financial services company. BOK Financial created an as-code operating model in a tightly regulated industry while strengthening security, increasing resiliency, and driving efficiencies. To do this, they've used HashiCorp's Terraform, Vault, and HashiCorp Cloud Platform, and we'll learn how that's worked out for them, and also find out about any challenges they may have encountered along the way and how they've resolved them. Our guest today, who will tell us the story, is Andrew Rao of BOK Financial. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about your role at BOK Financial?
Sure. So I've been with the company for about 3.5 years now. Started out as their cloud architect and then moved into a leadership role, managing our cloud services, DevSecOps, strategy as a company.
Great. So let's, as we start this story, let's set the scene a little bit. BOK is a financial services company, which means it's in a heavily regulated industry. What are some of the challenges inherent in that for a company that wants to move to cloud, being in a regulated industry like that?
Yeah, I mean, the regulations and regulators really are focused on managing risk, right? Mm-hmm. We want to ensure that customers can get their money, that it's accurate. Those are the core things, right? And so it's all about the controls that you have in place to ensure that it's accurate. A lot of times, in a traditional manner, and how we were, over 3 years ago, was separation of duties. You had a team that built, you had a team that deployed, you had a team that handled security, network, so forth. And then from a cloud perspective, there's a lot of different ways that we can pursue that.
Okay, and then so my understanding is that when did BOK begin to move to the cloud?
So we started playing with it in 2018, and then really started focusing on in 2019. Roughly, the time that I joined, we really started to gain a lot of momentum. Our first application, it was a small application, doesn't get much usage. It was kind of a pilot. Was in late 2019, but then we continued our build out since then.
It does seem like when you move to the cloud, a lot of best practices seem to be start small, start with something,
right?
And don't go all in right off the bat. So I was at your presentation this morning, which was terrific, and you mentioned that the company started using Terraform 2 years ago, to 2020. What was the issue you were trying to solve with that, and how did you arrive at that as the solution?
Yeah, it really came down to, we started out with one cloud provider. We used a lot of their native tooling. It worked great. But then we had a need to deploy and build out our second cloud provider for different capabilities, and their tooling was not the same. And so really where we struggled was we didn't want to deploy and manage our clouds in different ways. We didn't want, a cloud engineer to know just one cloud provider and their technology and their tech stack. So that's when we really started looking at how else can we do this, and that's when Terraform was a great option for us.
Okay, and and then GitOps is part of what you do and how does that all work together with?
Yeah, we made a conscious effort to really focus on automation, right? We didn't want to do things manually, which is really that traditional, data center, how we've done things for decades. So we wanted to do everything as code. It required a lot of upskilling for some of our staff because they've never done version control or automation capabilities. So in addition to learning Terraform and these other cloud concepts, they had to learn all of that. But it's really empowered us to move a lot faster and give our application teams the ability to deploy at their pace versus waiting on other teams.
Yeah, and you mentioned in the discussion this morning that that people worry about the speed because they have to wait for their request to be approved and so on. But in a regulated industry, things don't always think there are obstacles to.
Yeah, there's a lot of checks and balances in a regulated industry, and the beauty of GitOps is because it's in a version control system, you have all of that history of who made it, who approved it, when it ran, all of that is built into it. And so what we ended up doing was essentially taking away access for every user to our cloud environment. So really, most of the staff has view only. They can't make changes. Has to go through this process, which gives us that full audit tracking capability.
I just want to go back to, you mentioned the upskilling that was needed. What kind of, there's a, saying that, technology problems are often really people problems or people challenges. How did people react to, they've got to upskill, we got to learn this new stuff?
We started off with, with people that were wanting to learn cloud and wanting to work in this new model and built that team. And it took us probably a good year to get everyone comfortable in it. Because they're not just learning, like I said, they're not just learning Terraform. Most of them have never done application coding. And so when you start looking at, infrastructure as code, Terraform, version control, they have to learn how to do branching strategies and, even merge request approvals, looking at differences and things like that. And so that was all new that they had to learn in addition to everything else.
Yeah, and Git is, having learned Git, it's its own hill to climb.
It is. There's a lot, yes.
Yeah.
But it's very powerful once you know it, and it seems very easy. So, yeah.
So, obviously, security and secrets management is especially important when you're dealing with people's financial data and so on. How did you arrive at, you then added Vault to your stack? What was the process there?
Yeah, I mean, we essentially had, we had users, right, our deployment users, credentials, for our clouds, and we had them separated out based on the type of deployment that they were doing. So there was still separation, but, it wasn't easy for us to rotate those credentials on a frequent basis. And so we really felt the need that we want to make these short-lived tokens no more than an hour for that deployment. And so that's where, we looked at Vault. It was a great solution. It was an easy add-on, with Terraform, and it just made sense. So, that's really given us the ability to have effectively no credentials, long-lived credentials out there, and secure our environment even more.
That sounds great. Have there been any challenges to in dealing with this new Terraform and Vault and getting, other than the upskilling that you mentioned?
Yeah, the biggest challenge we really found was with our Terraform modules. We went that route so that we could ensure that things were deployed securely, right, and effectively. Like we didn't want to deploy an application in a static environment, so we want to force our application teams in a way to build a resilient application, right, automatic scaling and things like that. The biggest challenge we had was, and this kind of goes back to coding practices, was you start having these modules dependent on other modules, and so what does that design pattern look like? We started out having these modules separate, then we put them all in one, but our deployment, we ran into a problem where we were running on containers and the container filled up with memory. So we had to basically now start peeling back and saying, it doesn't make sense to put it all in one. That's basically like a monolithic application.
Right.
So
yeah.
There's been a lot of learning along the way, just like anything else you're doing with technology, right? You implement, you learn, and then you want to go back and redo what you already did at the beginning.
Yeah.
But
for this learning, have you had? How did you go through like HashiCorp to get the support for this, or the learning support, or
we did? Yeah, we went through different training programs that had HashiCorp on there. We did work really closely with our HashiCorp team. Even recently, I think beginning of the year, we had them come on site. We did a GitOps day where we educated more. We did a hands-on lab. And so that was really geared towards our security team to learn these concepts and the basics and actually deploy something through Terraform at the end of that day. So that was another great session to just bring some awareness.
Yeah. And then you've been using HashiCorp Cloud Platform. Can you tell us a little bit about how that?
So, HashiCorp, we have Terraform Cloud, and then we did HashiCorp Cloud Platform with Vault. We didn't want to deploy and run Vault ourselves, so we went that approach so that we could have connection to our cloud environment and basically let them manage it. It's been great. Vault is it's one of those things that's like Kubernetes. It's powerful, but could be complex. And so supporting it, we don't really want to do. We'll let them manage it. So that's been great. And then, Terraform Cloud through HashiCorp Cloud Platform has been, phenomenal with just the features that they bring out, the run tasks, the variable sets, all of that.
Big news out of this conference is the availability of HashiCorp Boundary. Easy, spinning up a zero trust network. I mean, what do you think that kind of impact will have on your industry?
It's something that we're going to explore. I mean, zero trust, when you look at a regulated industry, again, managing risk, you don't want to have a big data center where it's just wide open, right? We do have segments that we've isolated out. So this is something that we're going to definitely look at because it could help us become more secure and reduce our risk overall. So I think it's a very promising product that we want to explore further.
If you could give advice to maybe a peer at a who's also in this industry about this sort of journey, what do you know now that you wish you'd known maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago that you about this? What advice might you give?
Definitely take the time to do it right. We went back and reworked some things periodically because we learned something too late, and you need to stay in front of the communication with business partners, IT leaders, that it's going to take longer to set this up, but once you do, it's incredible. I mean, we can spin up a same environment in a day, right? Complete full stack everything in the cloud in less than a day through this process. That's incredible, and we've had to do that. So.
Yeah, and it's had a good impact on your business and.
Absolutely. When we launched our largest application, I'll say they were ready for the launch week to be in a room, war room type situation of monitoring everything. After the first day, the system just scaled like it was supposed to, did what it was supposed to, and you're like, okay, I guess we don't need this anymore, So that complete shift from what they're used to in the past to this new model and new way that we designed and deployed everything. So, big impact.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much for joining me today.
Yeah.
Joining us today, Andrew. That's a wrap on our discussion about the cloud journey at BOK Financial and its use of HashiCorp solutions in that journey. And again, thank you, Andrew, for joining us. And we thank this episode's sponsor, HashiCorp, for sponsoring today's podcast. I'm Heather Joslin for the New Stack, And this has been an on-the-road episode of the New Stack Makers. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.